Alright guys, I'm going to try to answer a few questions that were sent to me via email or that have appeared in the comment section under some of the videos. And all these questions of course relate to being an expat in the Philippines. And I got a really interesting question last night regarding the growing economy of the Philippines. Here's what this guy says to give you a little bit of background. I believe he's thinking about moving to the Philippines after he retires. And he says this: I've been tracking the Philippines economy and see lots of new videos about how well the economy is doing, and that growth is expected to continue under Duterte as well. I've also been seeing booming infrastructure improvements videos as well. My question is about how to protect my fixed US dollar income against what seems to be looming inflation and devaluation of the US dollar against the Philippine peso. This seems inevitable against a strong Philippine economy. My thinking at the moment is I need to buy a condo to lock in the major part of my housing and that portion of the total cost of living soon, before rising prices increased demand puts buying a condo out of reach. He mentioned wanting to buy in the Metro Manila area. So, do I think that you should invest in real estate as an expat in the Philippines due to the booming Philippine economy and some of the economic issues we have in the United States? That's the question. Pardon me there. My answer to that is absolutely not. I would not advise you to invest in real estate for that purpose. Now, before I go any further, let me say this. I am not an expert on economics. And if any of you want to make political rants, please find some other venue to do that, because that's not the purpose of my channel. So let's just talk about this a little bit. I would, in the video that I've mentioned before, I'll try to link it into this one. In a video that I did before, I said that really the only reason that you should invest or buy a house or property or a condo or whatever in the Philippines is if you are 100% sure that you want to live in that spot for the rest of your life. And my advice has not changed. I will add another thing to this. There's another reason or another condition that must be met before you buy a house or a condo or whatever in the Philippines. You need to be 100% sure that you know what the heck you're doing. And just because you have to be so careful. And that's my advice. In the current economic situations, they haven't changed. I mean, the current economic situation, let me repeat that, the current economic situation dynamics that are happening do not change my opinion on that. So let's back up and let me tell you a few reasons why I still feel this way about it. First of all, if you're going to buy something in the Philippines, it's probably going to take you a few years just to have some idea of what you're going to be doing. And there are just a lot of things that you're going to have to look into. Do you want to live in this place? What are your neighbors like? I've mentioned that in this previous video. Something else. What is insurance cost going to be? Is this a flood-prone area? What about earthquakes? There are just a lot of things that you need to think about before you would buy a house or property in the Philippines. And it's going to really take, I believe, some time for you to get adjusted and really get your head on straight before you need to even think about buying something in the first place. But now let's back up and talk about the economic things that are going on. Yes, the Philippines is doing fairly well economically, and it actually has been for quite some time. But keep one thing in mind. The growing Philippine economy does not necessarily mean that the economy in the U.S. is going to get worse. It's not when one wins, the other loses. Now, I know probably what you're thinking about is the fact that here in the U.S., like maybe other countries, we have a lot of politicians who love to spend other people's money and who love to get the country in trillions and trillions of dollars in debt. Yep, that is a factor, but I don't think that the American economy is on the verge of collapse anytime soon. In fact, right now it's okay. I think it would do a little bit better if we had some administration that was more business friendly. But all in all, when you look at things like when I look at my 401k, my mutual funds, they're growing. They're in decent shape. So that's the first thing to keep in mind is that just because the Philippine economy is growing doesn't mean the U.S. economy suddenly is going to get weak or that the dollar is going to get weak. Now, I'll get into some more of that in just a second, but something else to keep in mind is remember that changes typically happen fairly slowly when you're talking about exchange rates. So, in other words, you're not going to move to the Philippines and then wake up one morning and suddenly, instead of 45 peso to the dollar, you're getting 15 peso to the dollar. Generally speaking, it does not work that way. These are changes that once you move to the Philippines, you can monitor over time. They tend to happen very slowly. And if you decided that you wanted to make some kind of move based on unfavorable changes in the dollar, you could, but again, it's not something that tends to happen very quickly. Now, can the dollar devalue relatively quickly at times? Yes. And let's talk about the one of the worst case scenarios that not this was not worst case, but a bad scenario that happened, and I lived through this when I was in the Philippines. The economic collapse that happened around 2007, 2008. The peso at that point went from, at one point I was getting almost 56 peso to the dollar, and then fairly quickly it went down to like 40, something like that. Now it didn't move that quickly, but let's say it went down from 50 to 40. So needless to say, that wasn't too fun for me. Now, did that happen because the Philippine economy was so strong? No. It happened because of the huge bubble that burst here in the United States. So, one thing that I'm trying to get across here is that when you get an unfavorable exchange rate, it's probably going to be because some big shift happening in the U.S. economy. It's not because the Philippine economy outpaces the U.S. economy or something like that. So let's go back to this really bad scenario that happened in 2008. It kind of stunk to go from getting about 50 peso to the dollar to getting only about 40, 41, 42. That's where it was there at its lowest, I think. It stunk, but still, you're talking about a 20% reduction in your spending power. I didn't like it. It stunk. I didn't enjoy it, but at the same time, it was not something that I could not survive. So even if you move to the Philippines and you have something really bad happen in the U.S. economy, like what happened in 2007, 2008, your purchasing power is reduced, but it's still very survivable. So again, I would not invest in Philippine real estate just for that reason. Now let me add something else here. If you're coming to the Philippines on a fixed income, and one of your goals is to make your money stretch as much as possible, then to be honest, Metro Manila is the last place I would advise you to think about in terms of a place where you're going to move to. And the reason is rent and everything in Metro Manila is just, it's life in Metro Manila is going to be the most expensive place in the Philippines to live. It's still cheaper, generally speaking, in the U.S., but it's expensive. And If you want to be near Manila, what I would advise you to do is consider some of the options either north or south of Manila. So for example, if you've watched some of my other videos, you know I'm a big fan of Angeles City. If you go a little bit, that's about an hour north, an hour or so north. You get a little bit closer, you're in a city called San Fernando, which is also a pretty nice city. Either one of these places, you can easily find a place to rent for 200 or 300 bucks a month. And to me, that's just hard to beat in terms of cheap rent and making your money stretch further. If you go a little bit south of San Fernando, if you get north of Quezon City, you're in the Bulacan province, and that's got some towns where you could rent. Or if you wanted to go south of Manila, you could go to places like Lipa City, Batangas City, places like that. So if you're moving to the Philippines and you're wanting to make your money stretch, Manila is not the place that I would go. I mean, think about this. The reason that most people live in Manila is because they need to be there for work. And if you have an independent source of income, meaning a pension, Social Security, whatever, there's probably not a compelling reason for you to move to Manila. And you may say, well, I have someone there I want to meet. I have my girlfriend's going to be there. Still, she's going to be okay with you living somewhere that's an hour away from Manila, and she can still visit her family. Anyway, I hope that this video answers that question. And back to my original point, I would not buy any type of real estate in the Philippines unless you are 100% sure you know exactly what you're doing, what you're buying, all the cost with it, insurance, all that, and you're sure you want to live in that place the rest of your life. One more thing that I will add here quickly in relation to real estate is another thing you have to keep in mind is if you buy something and you own it, what's going to happen to it when you're gone? Have you thought even about that aspect of it? So again, I would advise you to move somewhere where the rent is affordable and enjoy life, and don't look at real estate as an investment, or don't think that suddenly you're going to have millions and millions of people buying houses and there's no houses available to buy in the Philippines. I just don't see that happening anytime soon. So let me know if this video answers your question and if it helped.